Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. This is our last session of the Transitioning to Retirement workshops. We're really excited that you are joining us again today. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes as people sign on because the numbers keep growing. Just a couple things. We'll have chat available and the Q&A. So whichever you would like to use, we'll be monitoring both of them. And I don't anticipate that we'll take the whole 3 hours. So this session will be split in two. We'll have a session mostly on recall and going back to work in retirement, and then we have a licensed clinical psychologist and a behavioral specialist that will be on for the second half of the program. They're from ASAP. And they'll just be talking about, what to do when in retirement and the things you should start thinking about now to sort of prepare yourself for that big chunk of time that you're going to have on your hands once you do retire. Because I think for a lot of us, we think about the healthcare, we think about the finances, those sort of things, but we don't always really put things in perspective about all that time that you put forth in your career, and now you're going to have a lot of free time. So they're going to talk to you about that. We had a great session with them this morning in our staff session, so I'm looking forward to having that again this afternoon with them. So going on, the numbers slowed down just a little bit. I'm sure we'll have more people joining us. I just want to again introduce Amanda Seta. She is our Assistant Director of the Retiree Center. And once again, I'm Julianne Crowley with Retiree Center. We're always there. If you have questions, you can email us at retireecenter@ucdavis.edu. If we can't answer your question, we most likely know who can, and we can refer you to them. And then our main phone number is 530-752-5182. And I'll put that in the chat so you all have that again. But right now I'm going to introduce Vice Provost Phil Cass is here with us, and he's going to talk to you about maybe coming back in retirement and some of the benefits of being a faculty person in retirement. And also we have Brad Horton here from Academic Affairs, and they're going to give you a lot of great information. I know I always learn something new when I listen to the two of them. So I'm going to turn it over to Vice Provost Cass to get us started. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thanks so much, Julianne, and also thanks to Amanda and Brad for putting this on. Since this is my swan song with respect to this series, I just want to acknowledge all the work they have put into this, bringing us to today, because it does take a lot of time and effort, as well as a lot of research to make sure that the information that we're giving you is completely correct and up to date. And indeed, the talk that I'm about to give you has changed in some ways substantially since last year as well. So for that, I'm very grateful to the three of you. Okay, Brad, next slide, please. All right, so the things I'm going to talk to you about today, as Julianne was mentioning, include things that you can do after you retire, but also other things that you might want to consider even before then. For example, we'll talk about the emeritus status for Senate and non-Senate academics, because questions come up about this every year. In fact, in my office, they came up even as recently as last week. Some of the basic rules for being recalled, if that is something that you would like to explore. Compensated activities in retirement. There are certain rules. Some of them emanate from the federal government, and some of the restrictions that exist in recall. And then remaining engaged through other kinds of activities. And it turns out there are actually a lot of programs that we have on campus for people to remain engaged in. And I'm not just talking about department meetings. Once you retire, depending on what your own personal interests are. So I'm going to just talk relatively briefly about some of those. One point that I want to also reiterate, Julianne had told you that if you have questions, reach out to her. If she doesn't have the answer, she does know who to reach out to. I do want to emphasize that when it comes to specific questions about retirement, what the options are, when is optimal to do it, and so on, you really want to talk to RASC at UC. Academic affairs, as much as we like to talk about these things, is not the office of record about retirement-related issues. And for that, you really need to go to people with a specific expertise in retirement, and that would be RASC. All right, so with that, Brad, why don't we go to the next slide? Okay, first of all, emeritus status. So it turns out that for people who are in the academic senate, you don't actually have to do anything in order to get it. It's conferred automatically at the time of retirement. And it's done for the titles all the way down to associate professor, and including full professor. And within those two ranks, you've got a number of different academic senate titles. It doesn't apply, unfortunately, to assistant professors. You have to be, at least tenured for that. But if you fall into one of these titles, at the point that you retire, okay, with one exception I'll talk about a little bit later, emeritus status is automatically going to be granted to you, and there's nothing that you would need to do about it. Okay, Brad, let's go to the next one. And thanks, Brad, for forwarding these slides. So there's no special criteria for conferral of emerita or emeritus status on every professor and associate professor, again, because it's conferred automatically on retirement. Now, in a moment, I'm going to make a distinction, though, between retiring from the university and separating from the university. And they actually are very different things, and they have very different implications for emeritus status. So formally, if you retire from the UC system, that's going to include basically basic retirement under UCRP, the University of California Retirement Plan. Or you could do the lump sum payment option from UCRP. I'm sure you've heard about that. Or separation from service while receiving disability income from UCRP. So those are the things that mean that you are technically retiring under UCRP. And as I've said before, it's conferred automatically to professors and associate professors. Now, here's the slight wrinkle. When the effective date of retirement is within 120 days of separation from the university. So if somebody just outright quits their job at the university, that would be considered separation. That's technically not the same thing as retirement. So it becomes automatic if you separate, if you then go through the retirement process through RASC within 120 days of separation. Not everybody who has separated in the past realized that. And so potentially years later, they come to us and they say, well, how come I don't have emeritus status? And the answer is, well, you actually never retired, or you retired well after these 120 days of separation. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so if you retire more than 120 days after separating, it's possible that you may not get emeritus status because of this rule. And it's not a rule that Academic Affairs or that UC Davis made up. It's one that actually exists in Academic Personnel Manual, and that's in APM 120. So in order to get an exception to that, it has to go through the chancellor. It has to go all the way up to UCOP, and it may not happen. So I would urge you that if you're eligible for emeritus status, but you decide you want to separate and retire later, to get that emeritus status, make sure that you retire within 4 months of separating. Now, that's for the people who are in Senate titles. People who are not within the Senate titles, and we have thousands of people at UC Davis that fall into that category, are also eligible to request what's called non-Senate academic emeritus status. But it's not automatic, and you have to meet 3 key criteria in order to do that. The first is that you have to have served as part of UC Davis for at least 10 years. And 10.0 is the number. It's not 9, it's not 8.5, it's not even 9.5. You have to be, according to policy, employed for 10 years. Second of all, you have to reach the highest rank of that series. So while associate professors who are in the Senate are entitled to emeritus status, that's not true for non-Senate titles. So, for example, if you're in the professional research series, the project scientist series, academic administrator, continuing educator, and so on, you have to reach the highest rank of that series. And if you're in the lecturer series, by the way, you have to reach the senior lecturer rank in order to be eligible. And then finally, you have evidence of noteworthy and meritorious contributions to the university's educational mission. A department chair would write a letter in support of that third criterion, documenting how what you've done has been noteworthy and meritorious. In fact, that letter will also attest that you've served at least 10 years and that you've reached the highest rank in that series. If you want to learn more about this, we have APM 120 easily accessible through the Academic Affairs website, and also a UCD implementation of APM 120 called APM UCD 120, again, through the Academic Affairs website. If you go to Quick Links and you search on Academic Personnel Manual under Quick Links, you'll get there right away. Now, anytime you want exceptions to these rules, the chancellor would have to approve it, and my experience is he has not been very amenable to approving exceptions. And so these exceptions, apart from the chancellor having to approve it, would then have to go to the UC Office of the President. They're really unlikely to be granted. So I just wanted you to be aware of that and not raise any expectations. Periodically, we have had people who said, well, I haven't been here 10 years. I still want it. I haven't reached the highest rank, still want it. I have never seen those actually get approved, even by the chancellor. And if it's not going to get approved by the chancellor, it's not going to get approved by UCOP. And I see that Brad threw the link immediately in the chat. So thank you again, Brad. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, now IRS rules begin to apply when it comes to retirement issues. So for UCRP members who have not reached normal, okay, and that's not the minimum, the normal retirement age, okay, recall discussions may not occur until a break in service occurs, which means after you get your first UCRP monthly retirement payment or 30 days after you've ended UC employment. Now, what is normal retirement age? It depends on what retirement tier you fall into. Most of the people who are on here, though I don't see your names, I would guess that you would have probably joined UCRP like me before 2013. So a normal age for retirement, which doesn't mean you have to retire then, but a normal age is 60 years. If you joined UCRP after July 1st of 2013, your normal retirement age is 65. So again, people like chairs, like deans are not supposed to talk to you about retirement and recall until you have reached these normal retirement ages, whichever apply to you. Now, I suppose if you want to go and initiate a conversation, that would be okay, but you would have to be the one to initiate them. But a chair and a dean should not be initiating with you if you have not reached these normal retirement ages. Now, again, that's distinct from the minimum retirement age as well. And of course, many people retire far after the so-called normative retirement age. All right, so we try to make sure that the deans, the chairs, et cetera, know about this, because to not do it would be a violation of IRS rules. Okay, Brad, let's go to the next one. Now, let's suppose that you are recalled back to work 30 days or longer after you retire. Now, by IRS rules, you cannot be recalled for more than 43% time. And that 43% would be of your final employment salary in any given month. So you can't say, well, I'm going to do, let's say 60% recall 1 month, and then a commensurate reduction so that it averages 43% the next month. These are hard rules that have to be followed. And those requests for recall approval are going to have to go through my office. And we do check to make sure that you do not exceed 43% in any particular year. That doesn't mean that it can't be less than 43% for some months, and then it could go up other months and so on. The numbers can vary, but they can't go above 43%. Now, a recall agreement can be created for up to 3 years. After that, there would be an annual renewal. And for many people, these annual renewals just keep going and going. There's somebody in my own department who I think has been recalled every year that I've been vice provost. And that's, I'm in my 9th year. And he's retired long before then. So these things are very, very possible to do. Now, recalls are requested at the discretion of the department, the dean, or another administrator, and then have to be approved centrally through academic affairs. And I have to actually go in and formally approve them. In order for me to approve them, though, you have to undergo something called a compliance check. And a compliance check is just to make sure, very simply, that you have not been found, let's say, guilty of breaking rules, academic code of conduct, other sorts of things, that you've been in good standing. And if you have not had those problems, then getting approved should not be an issue. Occasionally, and this has actually happened recently, somebody will want to be recalled, but they have not passed their compliance check for certain, let's say, things that have happened in the past. If you don't pass the compliance check, then you will not be recalled. So it's just, something to be aware of. Now, some recalls are without salary. Some, again, like I said, can get up to 43% salary. But even if you are doing 0% appointments on a recall, because you're still working for the university, even though you may not be paid, you still need to go through the formal recall appointment process for insurance purposes. So doing the work, even if unpaid, equals recall. So please remember that. And if you have any questions, again, you're welcome to reach out to the Retirement Center or talk to RASC about that. Okay, next slide, please, Brad. Okay. Now, this is something that is new. And I'm grateful to Brad for actually putting this into the slides because he understands it much better than me. So I'm going to really read it verbatim, just so you are aware of this new and unfortunate issue that has come up. So if you're being recalled or even being rehired into an appointment at any percentage of FTE, which includes 0%, less than 6 months after retirement, then your enrollment in a UC retiree medical plan will be suspended if you're eligible for Medicare and living in California. And UC is going to instead offer you health insurance that you are going to have to pay for. Now, this is something that was kind of unexpected, and we didn't have to talk about this a year ago. But it's something that if you do plan to get recalled less than 6 months after retirement, you need to explore and make sure that you fully understand the implications, if not repercussions, of this. And this is nothing that Academic Affairs has got expertise on. So again, I would urge you to talk to RASC about this. Now, if you hold a title called Emeritus without salary and no other job title whatsoever, then you can remain enrolled in a UC retirement medical benefit program. Again, if you have any doubt about this, contact RASC. Now, if you're recalled or rehired into an appointment more than 6 months after retirement, you can remain enrolled in a UC retirement medical benefits provided you work less than 43.75% time. And I don't know why it's 43.75 when we've been talking about 43% before, but I trust in these numbers that Brad's provided, so thank you. Okay, next slide. It's unfortunately complicated, but that's exactly why we have RASC. And you may have heard a lot of stories about problems getting through to RASC before. It's gotten a lot better in the last year, and it's even possible to set up an appointment, an individual appointment with a member of RASC to go over these things, so you don't have to sit on the phone waiting for a while. Okay, so for more information, Brad has provided a website for this at UCNet. So thank you for doing that. And there is an FAQ section that covers the common questions that people have. If you need more help, again, as Julianne said, you've got the rehired retiree support services for this whole list of how-to guides, webinars, contact information, etc. So it definitely pays to do your homework. And if you do plan to retire, I would start contacting RASC and doing this kind of homework no less than 3 months before you intend to retire. Okay, and since one of the most common retirement dates is around June 29th, that means that you should start really working on this, as early as March. Okay, if not earlier, by the way. There's a lot to learn, and so you definitely want to do your homework. Okay, next slide, please.
Hi, Phil. Before we move on, I just wanted to also mention that there's some really great information on the UC guidance page regarding the new benefits changes, as well as rehired retiree support resources, and they include both recorded and live webinars where folks can ask questions about benefits when they're being rehired or recalled. And then before we move on, Phil, I also wanted to ask, there was a question that came in via the chat. As a faculty member, can you outline some of the advantages of having emeritus status?
I will. I'm actually going to get to that in a little bit, so stay tuned.
Okay, we'll put that in the parking lot.
Sorry?
We'll put that in the parking lot until you get to that.
Well, how apropos, given that one of the things I'll talk about has to do with parking benefits. That's a joke. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so reasons for recall. Okay, after you go ahead and retire. The three main reasons are related to the three criteria that people are expected to have under APM 210. Or other titles, by the way, not just restricted to professors. But the main reasons: teaching, research, and service. And I'll go through quickly each one of these three things. Okay, Brad, thanks. Okay, so let's start with teaching. Many faculty are recalled to do teaching, and that can mean even summer sessions as well as the academic year. So frequently departments still want people to cover courses, and many faculty who have retired are still anxious and remaining engaged in the classroom, interacting with students, and so they can be recalled to do teaching. They can also be recalled into the Education Abroad program. Now, that's distinct from just going abroad and doing some teaching, but the actual Education Abroad program you would be recalled for to do teaching in. If you are in one of the health sciences schools, med, nursing, vet med, then you can also be recalled to do clinical teaching, and many of the medical school faculty I see are recalled to do teaching, as well as the veterinary medicine faculty too. Now, the rate of pay, as we've alluded to before, is based on a negotiated percentage of your final employed salary. It's got to be 43% or less, but it could vary depending on what a department or other academic unit or a grant, if that's how you're being paid, can afford. So you're not automatically entitled to 43%. It's really the sort of thing that has to be negotiated between the chair and the dean and you. Okay, next slide, please. With respect to doing research now, many faculty are also recalled to work on research projects. They want to continue their research. Maybe they've got grants that are still going on at the time that they retire, and so they want to continue working on those. Don't forget there has to be a 30-day break in service. But with respect to space, once you retire, you're not technically and automatically entitled to space. So this is the sort of thing that you have to negotiate before you retire with the chair and potentially with the dean as well. It really depends on what sort of space is available and what the needs within a department or an ORU are. Because when people retire, they often are going to be replaced, and those new faculty are going to need space as well. So if you do get space, there's no guarantee that it's going to be the equivalent space or the same space. It entirely could be less space as well, because there's only a finite amount of space under the control of the dean and the chair, and it may have to be apportioned among other individuals as well as you. So make sure that you get that worked out ahead of time. Now, a question that we get every year has to do with what's called the research professor title. Now, unlike the kind of title that you have, whether it's professor of clinics, whether it's research scientist, project scientist, and many of the others that are in the academic federation, those are bona fide official titles, payroll titles. But there is also a title that is called research professor, and that's a working title. It's not a payroll title. It's just one that people are allowed to use. It's kind of like, well, you may not know this, but we have our specialists in cooperative extension, and they have a working title of professor of cooperative extension. It's not a payroll title. When you retire, you are entitled to also use a research professor title if you are a professor emerita or a professor emeritus. A research professor title, being a working title, can be useful for people who want to apply for grants, but they don't want to put down in their grant application that they are emeritus or emerita because they're worried that the granting agency might look, let's say, unfavorably upon a grant application from somebody who's actually retired. So if you want, you are entitled to use the research professor title. You don't have to get approval, from the dean or from academic affairs in order to do it, since it is a working title. Whether you want to use that or not is entirely up to you, but it is available to you to use. Okay, Brad, let's go to the next one, please. Okay. Now, with respect to research funds, all funds that reside in UC Davis accounts technically belong to the UC regents. Okay, and these monies are likewise under the dean's control, and they have to be used. They can only be used for university purposes. Now, that's pretty important. These monies can be used to further the mission of the university. Unfortunately, we have had instances where people have used them for reasons that really are not related to the university as well, including family vacations. Okay, that is bad, because if we find out that that is happening, you could be subject to discipline, not to mention paying the money all back. Now, departments are supposed to screen the reasons for using funds when you retire very, very carefully. In the past, that has not always happened, but there's added scrutiny now than there has been in the past. So again, I would urge you, if you need to go to a research conference and it's related to the research that you're doing as when you were recalled, I mean, that's one thing. Decide to just go to conferences for no particular reason, that's not okay. So be very judicious. When in doubt, check in with the people in your office that manage grants or manage accounts, and make sure that what you propose to do is acceptable. And that way you should be safe. Okay, now an MOU regarding account balances really needs to be developed with the dean and the chair before you retire, and that's to avoid any misunderstandings later on. In other words, if you've got plans to be recalled and you're going to need the money for specific purposes that are pursuant to the reason for being recalled, work that out before you retire so that the money isn't swept and you're left with not enough to accomplish what you want to accomplish. It's always a good idea to consult with your chair and your dean about anything that you intend to do at the point that you retire and want to be recalled. Okay, Brad, let's go to the next slide. Now, if you've got grant money and that there are specific uses for those funds that are in the grant, that's pretty much under your purview, under the terms of the grant. So if you've got, for example, an NIH grant to do work, and while that grant is still ongoing, you retire and you're going to get recalled and continue to work on the grant, the money is supposed to be used for what the grant intends and is in the budget line. Nobody's going to take that away from you. It's still a good idea to keep all people like chairs, deans informed about this, but your grant money will not get sucked away automatically because you retire. But there are other kinds of accounts. There's gift accounts, academic enrichment funds, etc. Remember, those belong to the regents. The dean controls them. And so if you need to use those when you are recalled, get an MOU with the department chair and the dean. Now, the MOUs are not indefinite. They have a fixed term, typically no longer than 3 years. If you want to extend them, you can, but it has to be approved. Now, specifically with respect to academic enrichment funds, we have a website at the Academic Affairs website that talks about the specific use of those kinds of funds. And many faculty, have them. They got them for various reasons. Again, they're not for salary. They were never intended to be for salary, but they can be used to do things related to the function of the university. So take a look at this website if you do have them. Okay, Brad, let's go to the next slide. All right, now, people can also be recalled to be in administrative roles. And this sometimes happens when there is going to be a lapse in appointing a department chair. And I've actually seen it happen where people have been recalled to be like a vice chancellor, potentially a dean, and so on, or a graduate group chair even, or a department vice chair. So this is yet another reason why faculty can be recalled. And I won't name names, but I've seen people who have been in very illustrious, high-level administrative positions retire, and then they get recalled to continue to do administrative work for the university until somebody more permanent can be found, which can sometimes take well over a year. There are also special kinds of titles that faculty can be recalled into: faculty assistant to the dean, faculty assistant to the provost or chancellor, and so on. And then also sometimes the university needs to conduct investigations. And those investigations are typically run out of the Office of Academic Affairs or the Office of Research. So I have definitely seen people get recalled to serve as investigators in these roles. Okay, next slide, please, Brad. Okay, now let's talk about shared governance, and we're going to start moving into the realm of what are some of the advantages of being gaining emeritus status. So I'm going to talk really about the academic senate, but again, as I said, you can get non-senate academic emeritus status as well. If you're in the federation, you just have to go through an approval process. Well, if you're emeritus, you're supposed to be informed in faculty meetings, and you're allowed to participate in faculty meetings. Now, depending on your department and what their department voting bylaws are, you may have department voting rights as well. Some departments extend voting rights to emeritus faculty, some do not. So you would have to actually see what your department voting rules are, but that's not hard to do. Your MSO should be able to provide you with what those voting rules are if they're not handy. There is an academic senate emeritus committee itself. It's a standing committee. That committee works on all kinds of emeritus issues, and people who are on it include emeritus faculty. Emeritus faculty are often asked to serve on other standing and special committees as well. If you have an interest in perhaps remaining engaged with the academic senate, that's fantastic. And what I would do in your case, and I've put that down here, is reach out to the executive director of our academic senate, and that's Edwin Arevalo. I've given you his email and phone number, and let him know that you're interested in remaining engaged. And if opportunities appear, then he may be able to reach out to you and talk to you about those sorts of things. Periodically, I've reached out to him and said, hey, I know somebody who's, really interested in remaining engaged. I know you guys have sort of ad hoc committees that you appoint people to every now and then. So what about considering this individual? So I would really suggest that if you want to remain engaged in the Senate, that you do that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, other ways that you could remain include serving on PhD dissertation committees or master's thesis committees. You can be involved in advising and counseling students as well. The Emeritus Association has various activities that you can participate in, and there are also events through the Retiree Center. And I'm going to talk about some other kinds of activities in a moment. So these are, again, lots of ways of remaining part of the university community. Okay, next slide, please. Now, the UC Davis Emeriti Association, I want to give a plug to them. They work very hard to make sure that your rights remain inviolate, even after you retire. It is membership based, and so I've been asked to say that the dues are $25 a year or $200 for lifetime membership. I would strongly recommend the lifetime membership. And like I said, it advocates for and supports Emeriti, which includes the advocacy effort for benefits. There are a series of talks, they call them brain food talks, led by recently retired faculty, and they talk about their research. There are board positions available. They manage the Emeriti Video Records Project, and if you haven't heard of that, basically what that means is that when faculty retire, the Emeriti Association will reach out to them and ask them to be interviewed on camera to sort of preserve their life story at UC Davis indefinitely. And so they're fascinating to listen to. I've listened to some of them myself. And that's just an amazing project. And then finally, help advocate to keep Emeriti and retiree parking free at UC Davis. And that's a benefit I mentioned in passing a little bit ago that actually is really, really nice. I'll say more about that in a moment. But yes, if you have the emeritus status, then you get free parking in A and C lots. Now, if you are recalled to work, the free parking goes away. And then once you're no longer recalled, the free parking comes back. Okay, next slide, please. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Okay, now, Center for Continuing and Professional Education, used to be called University Extension, has a lot of programs that they offer and that you are entitled to participate in. Some of them you may not be interested in, like getting a master's degree. Maybe you're past that. But these are all the kinds of programs that CPE has. And I'm going to go into some more detail about a couple of them in a moment. But if you retire, I would strongly urge you to consider participating in some of these, if for no other reason than to just keep your intellectual curiosity satiated. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now I just quickly put together some of the examples of the areas of studies that they have. And by the way, you don't just have to take classes if you want to participate. You're also able to teach classes if that's something that you want to do. And I know that people really enjoy teaching. My dad used to teach political science and history in secondary schools, and after he retired, and he used to continue to teach at a senior center just because he loved teaching that stuff. And so you're welcome to do the same sort of thing through CPE. These are some of the current broad topical areas that people can teach in, that you can take courses in as well. Okay, next slide, please, Brad. Now, there are online programs as well. And this is a website that I took off of CPE about it. I know this is sort of hard to see, but I put the web link for CPE at the very bottom. And so when you get a chance, just go online and take a look at these things. The number of courses that they have is really, really astonishing. And you can see down here also, they've got courses on Coursera. They've got previews of the online programs as well. So strongly consider taking advantage of these. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and I just took again this off of the website because they're already enrolling for courses in the winter. Soon they're going to be enrolling for courses in the spring. And again, the website is at the bottom of these things. It's a really, really nice benefit that they can offer to you. And so I would encourage you to take advantage of it. Next slide, please. All right. Now, through CPE, there is also this organization called Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And this, again, has all kinds of different courses in it. And I put just the front of the course catalog on the right, just to give you an idea that this is not just a few things here and there. There is a lot of stuff available to you. And you just need to get on the website and take a look for yourself. As I said, you can take classes and you can teach classes through this institute. It is a fee for service, but if you're a member of the Emeriti Association, you can get a discount for it. So please feel very, very welcome to start taking a look through this catalog at what is available to you. Okay, next slide, please, Brad. And okay, getting back to an earlier question, the benefits and the privileges of having emeritus status. Okay, so you get the right to use the emeritus title. You get the right to continue department and Senate membership, which includes service on department and Senate committees, as I mentioned before, service on student committees, I've mentioned that before, the ability to mentor students, which I've mentioned, the potential for recall or volunteering for service, research, or teaching. Okay, again, recall is not a right. You have to go through a formal approval process. Almost everybody gets approved to be recalled, so you don't really need to worry about that too much. The only problem is if you didn't pass the compliance check, which I'm sure all of you will. And then, as I mentioned, the voting rights will vary by department. Some of them allow emeritus faculty to vote on actions, others do not. Okay, next slide, please. Now, you also get the right to continue to use your UC Davis email address, email services, and UC Davis directory listings. And I mean, to me, that's incredibly valuable because I don't have a private email account. Everything I do runs through my UC Davis email account. And I would hate to frankly lose that. So this is a really, really great benefit. The right to continued library privileges as well, access to software downloads and electronic journals as well. Sometimes what's available through the library can vary from year to year. I know the library has had some financial constraints and is contracting a little bit. Unfortunately, they're going to be losing their electronic subscription to the New York Times, which I really like. But in any case, you will have those library privileges if you have emeritus status. You are eligible again to serve as PI on grants. Many of our emeritus faculty do not stop doing their research, and they write grants. And as I mentioned, if you want, you can use the research professor title. Now, year after year, I say that there are currently no plans to discontinue university support to help defraying the cost of medical and dental insurance and get benefits through the healthcare facilitator program. And when I mean that there are currently no plans, I mean that. I can't guarantee what could potentially happen in the future, but you've got an emeritus association that lobbies on behalf of emeritus academics, thank goodness. And so this is definitely a benefit that we will all, I think, benefit from. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, you get access to the UC Davis's Foreign Travel Accident and Assistance Program. And as I mentioned, you get access to free parking in the A or the C zones. So just talk about the convenience of that. That's really amazing. And you'll get more information from this from the Retiree Center if you haven't already. But as I mentioned, the only problem is that if you get recalled, then you're not, and you're getting a salary, you're not going to be able to get the free parking. But otherwise, you will get it. You get access to advice from university-sponsored Fidelity Investment and Retirement Planners. You get access to campus venues at the same cost as active employees. And by the way, stay involved. Continue to go to the Mondavi Center, which is just absolutely amazing. If you've been here as long as I have, you remember what it was like before the Mondavi Center came in, and what a world of difference it is before and now the way it is. So I can't advocate for the Mondavi Center enough. And then access to resources to assist in navigating retirement through the Retiree Center. And again, we've got the website for you down at the bottom. It'll take a bit of time to go through all of this, all of these websites and do your homework, but it'll be well worth it. Okay, Brad, next slide, please. We're getting close to the end. Okay, so questions. You've got a fact sheet made available to you. We've got the Academic Affairs website under retirement and recalls. You've got the Emeriti Association website. You've got the Retiree Center website. You've got the Benefits Office to help you make informed decision. And you have UC RASC, which is like the UC Ray's website as well. So please take advantage of all of these sources of information. And finally, any more slides, Brad?
No, just one more slide, and that is your closeout.
Well, this slide, yeah. This is just for me to just say goodbye and introduce you to some of my canine friends.
Phil, we did have some questions that came in that I wanted to address, and that gives some folks here a chance to pose their questions in chat or in the webinar Q&A function. So when you were talking about benefits and privileges of being in emeritus status and also talking about titles, can you tell me a little bit about the timing of using research professor in grant applications, using research professor as a title in grant applications? Like if somebody is getting close to retirement, maybe not quite retired yet, can they use research professor in a grant application?
Yeah, I don't really see why not. I don't know that it would be advantageous if you're submitting a grant before you retire. You may consider it more advantageous to use your professor title or what other title you want. But I don't see why you necessarily couldn't do research professor if you would prefer that to professor, which you will be entitled to pre-retirement. After retirement, it's different. It would be professor emeritus or research professor.
And then another question that's just a point of clarification. When someone retires, and maybe you know the answer to this question. I believe I do, but I'd like you to share the answer. If somebody is recalled after they've retired, they would receive a salary based on their recall salary would be based on their recall effort and their salary upon exiting or retiring. Would they receive both their UCRP pension and retirement salary, so to speak, as well as their recall salary?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Same here. I just wanted to clarify that that's a question that came in live. So
It can be
and we do have. Oh,
lucrative.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry, Phil.
it can be lucrative,
Mhm.
for sure.
Well, and I think also it has to be at the 43% or less, correct?
Of course, yes.
Right,
Right.
yeah. So just reiterate that. Thanks.
And then in terms of emeritus status, if somebody is HSCP faculty, they would need to request for emeritus status, correct? And meet those
That's
three criteria.
that's exactly right. You do need to formally request it, and you can do that through your department. They will initiate it upon your request.
That's good. Great. And then another question that came in via the Q&A was, are there any guidelines or university resources for research faculty in terms of keeping records, storing, archiving previous research materials, and how to clear out labs and kind of make that graceful exit, so to speak?
So I'm not really, I think, qualified to talk about preservation of research materials. I would go to somebody in the Office of Research for that, because I don't want to step outside my lane. With respect to clearing out labs, that's something I think you need to work out with your department chair and potentially your college or school safety officer. So again, that's not an area that academic affairs would really become involved with, but work with your chair on that. They either have experience doing it or they can talk to somebody who has. I mentioned the safety officer because I have seen people retire and vacate lab space or freezer space, and you would not believe the stuff that was found later on in those freezers in particular or labs, and it required a considerable effort from a safety officer to intervene. So I just want to mention that as well. You're vastly better off getting that stuff worked out while you were still here than just retiring, walking away from it, and then someday somebody walks in and says, "Oh my God." That happened when I was a department chair.
And another question that just came in regarding compliance checks. Assuming that someone is not automatically granted the recall status and needs to request recall status, assuming that somebody is being recalled, and what kind of things are being looked at for compliance checks?
Have you been disciplined? Have you violated the faculty code of conduct? Or have you violated an analogous university rule if you're not under APM 015 faculty code of conduct? Those are really what's involved in a compliance check. If you have been a good university citizen, you don't have to worry about it. You do need to be in good standing, which means that you have to be current on all of your mandatory training. Okay, you can't be recalled if you are not current on your mandatory training. Once you do that, then that problem goes away. But if you have experienced discipline that we think could potentially impact how you would be as a recalled faculty, you may not then pass the compliance check. 99.9% of people pass compliance checks.
And there is a point of clarification I wanted to make, or a distinction I wanted to make on this question, and that is the compliance check is for recall, not for emeritus status. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, all these rules that I talked about for emeritus status, whether it's automatically conferred or whether you apply for it, that has nothing to do with a compliance check.
All right. Well, it looks like does anybody else have any more questions about this part before we maybe take just a few minutes? We have our next two presenters on and we'll want to get make sure that they can share and everything before. But if anybody's got any more questions for Phil and Brad, we welcome those now. Otherwise, I think we should take like a 5-minute break, come back, or maybe we come back at 2 o'clock and with the next part, and we'll have Allison Ward and Susanna Becerra on to walk you through how to the challenges of retiring and what to do with all that time. All right. Brad, Phil, thank you so much for another great session. I always learn something, like I said at the beginning, and there's a lot of information out there on the academic affairs. Once again, if you just don't know where to go and you're like, I can't remember who they said, blah, 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 call the Retiree Center or email us, or you can Julianne Crowley. I'm one of two Crowleys in all of the UC system, so you can find me. But we're always happy to get back to you and help you out as much as we can. So I think we'll come back at 2 o'clock while we get Allison and Susanna set up. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Brad. You're welcome to stay on.
Thank you. It's been a privilege
Thank
talking
you.
to you.
Okay. Allison, Susan, do you want to try to share? I think you need to send me a request. Hi, Allison. Thanks.
Hi, Julianne. Nice to see you. Okay, I'm going to send you the request now.
I want to make
Okay, there
sure,
you go.
do we have the Q&As and everything up and running? It seemed
We
like
do, yeah.
people liked that last time, and the anonymity.
And can you both see this?
And you can pause the recording during the
Okay, great. I walked out to my kitchen, and as I was coming back, I was like, I looked out one of my windows and I'm like, that tree wasn't there like an hour ago. My husband, he's moving around some big pots, so now I got one of my kumquat trees, and this beautiful pot is out the side window, and I was like, oh, that looks so pretty. I don't know. Brightened my day. Anyway, so we're going to get started. It's 2 p.m. and this is for the second half of this session. We have Allison Ward, clinical psychologist, and Susanna Becerra, behavioral specialist, I believe is what her title is. She can tell you more once they start talking. But we had a great session with them this morning. This is going to be a little interactive, and I hope you'll participate. It can be anonymous, so that's all good, but it really did make it fun. And what we found out this morning was a lot of people were asking questions, and other people were saying, I thought it was just me, that these things happen to. So it was really a great session and some camaraderie going on via Zoom, even though it was all anonymous. So I hope that you will give it a chance to be interactive with Allison and Susanna, because it was a lot of fun this morning. So I'm just going to let them take it over. Thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to another great session with you.
Julianne, thank you so much for having us. And we're so excited to be here today, both Susanna and myself. My name is Allison Ward. I'm a psychologist at the Academic and Staff Assistance Program, and I've been with UC Davis for about 7 years. And just like Julianne said, we're going to try to make this as interactive as possible. Feel free to drop answers and in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll also have you scan a couple QR codes using your phone so we can get responses to the questions. And we'll probably take a break about 45 minutes in. So about, let's say 2:45, we'll take a 15-minute break and then go from there. And now I'll turn it over to Susanna.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is Susanna Becerra. My title's behavioral health specialist, but I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have been with UC Davis about 10 years now in different departments. In this particular department with Allison, I have been coming on 3 years. And as far as retirement, I'm a little jealous. I still have a long way to go. Probably like 20 years. But if you guys don't mind sharing, even on the chat, just how many years you were been with UC Davis and your approximate retirement date. Is it this year, or are you planning ahead for next year? What are some of your thoughts? And right now there's somebody saying 23 years with UC Davis. Congratulations. So feel free to just drop it in the chat so we could see all the years everybody's been providing services to UC Davis. 38 years. Wow. Thank you guys all for your service with UC Davis. Somebody's retiring in 2027. That's great. You're planning ahead. 35 and a half years. Got to get the half in there. Got to make sure you get the half. 21 years in and about 2 years away from retirement. This is great. Thanks for sharing. Right now, it looks like 38 years is the most so far that I'm seeing. 2 years as faculty, 20 years as staff. Thank you. Yeah. And we can keep on sharing in there if you guys want to take a look at the chat to see what your fellow peers, how many years they've provided to UC Davis. It's kind of fun to see. And seeing when people are retiring, I get excited for you guys that you're gonna retire, and a little jealous, like I said. So I'm gonna hand it off to Allison. She'll be doing the first few slides, and we're gonna tag team.
Yeah, congratulations on all those years. I'm just thinking about all that accumulated wisdom if we added up all those years together in years of service. So we'll get started, right? We're going to start very simply with the word retire, right? Here it's saying to withdraw from action or danger, which is kind of an interesting thought. But the reason we put the definition up here is that potentially people are seeing retirement as something that is a little bit scary, right? And then we also have a definition of retire to kind of relax and kind of move back and ease up. So if you don't mind dropping in the chat, what comes to mind when you hear the word retire or retirement? We would love to know what thought first pops into your mind.
Old.
Old.
It's true. It's true. Excitement, another old age. Yeah.
Okay.
Freedom.
Fantastic. Old, freedom.
New phase of life. That's great. We're going to talk a lot about that. Anticipating next chapter. Somebody's moving to the coast. That's great. That's what comes to mind for them.
Yeah. So essentially essentially positive is what I'm hearing, in terms of connotations. That being said, right, retirement is a bridge between leaving one set of roles and even relationships and then really developing something totally new in retirement. This quote was by Dr. Schlossberg. She was a counseling psychologist who realized that after putting in so many years as a psychologist in retirement, she was struggling. So she's kind of become an expert on retirement, and we'll reference her throughout this presentation. But I think this quote is important because we have to realize that although there's excitement, there's moving to the coast and excitement and maybe all these dreams, to kind of play out that you didn't have the time to do when you were working, it's also a time of transition and adjustment. And with that comes feelings, right? Maybe feelings of excitement, but also fear. All of those feelings while we're adjusting are totally normal, right? So I want to normalize if you're having that experience, even of nervousness or trepidation, all of it's normal. Now moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the meaning of retirement, right? It of course can be seen as identity-based and a psychosocial process of an identity transition and a search for meaning, of course. In a way, it's an opportunity for a person to, of course, rethink their identity. And, all of you giving so many years of service to the university, I don't want to make an assumption, but I can imagine a fair amount of your identity is tied up in the role you had at work. But very interestingly, there was a study done of Harvard alumni, and it concluded that people who liked working best at 60 liked retirement at 75, right? Those who liked working liked retirement. So I think this is good news for people that have liked their jobs. But my question to you all is, why do you think that is? Why do you think people that liked working also enjoyed their retirement? And feel free to drop it in the chat.
No wrong guesses if you guys want to guess. Positive outlook, happy disposition. They like to keep busy whether at work or play.
Nice.
Mhm.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Those are all great responses, right? Or
They're
maybe
engaged.
hmm or people find meaning what exactly, whether they're at work or doing something that is not a work endeavor, right? They have this kind of propensity to kind of make the most of life, which is a great quality. So, in terms of, again, the meaning of retirement, it's a person's career has so many learning cycles. And, the study showed that a person can go through major career shifts maybe 10 times or more during his or her lifetime. And I think I said in the last presentation, sometimes in our minds we think, life or our career trajectory is going to go like this, when in fact it can be one step forward, two steps back. Or maybe there have been unexpected twists and turns in all of your careers. So I'd like you to think about some of those twists and turns, right? How did you handle them? How did you pivot, learn, and grow? Maybe even from something that didn't feel good at the time, that maybe felt like a failure or not where you wanted to be. How did you succeed anyway? Because you're going to use those same set of skills in retirement. Yeah, and retirement is just an extension, essentially, of your working life. It's the next step. So, just as I was saying earlier, right? If so much of your identity was tied up in the work that you do, now your identity is about retirement. What does that look like? And here, it's really about having an intention for something else, something new that you want to try, right? And then seeing, was this thing that I wanted to try, right? Turning an avocation or a hobby, into paid work, right? How did that go, right? Did that work out? Did it not? Then you can revise your strategy and try again. So this is really this, identity that you had, during your work years, an intention to try something new, and then a trial until you truly get where you want to be in retirement, right? Again, it's not this process that goes in a straight line, just like your work life. There's some, trial and error along the way. Next, I just want to really touch upon just a bit about human development, right? It's kind of hard to go back to the beginning, but as a psychologist, I always find that fascinating. Large percent of our personality develops ages 0 to 5. Of course, there's nature and nurture. But then in adolescence, we're trying on a new identity, right? I said in the last presentation, I have a 13-year-old and I'm watching her try on these new identities. And it feels like there's some jagged edges when we try on new identities. But then in young adulthood, we eventually reach, what am I going to do for a career? What is my personal life going to look like? And then when we look at the latter stages of kind of the human life cycle, mature adulthood, 50 to 65, 65 and up, Erik Erikson, who's a famous psychologist, talked about the idea of ego integrity versus despair. Meaning, did I live a life that was truly satisfying to me, or was there something left behind and now I'm despairing? He said, in essence, that was the kind of psychosocial or the task of the end of the life cycle. And I feel that that's, very germane here because essentially you all now have the opportunity to say, what is going to make my life feel satisfying? And maybe it already does, and that's fantastic. But I understand that it takes so much time, effort, heart, grit to be a professor. Maybe you didn't have the time that you wish you had had to try out a new endeavor. And so maybe just think to yourself, what is going to make my life truly satisfying in this next phase? We're going to make this next slide a little bit interactive because it's going to ask the questions, what am I looking forward to in retirement? And what am I concerned or worried about? And what you'll do, and I'm sure you've used this before, is scan the QR code using your camera, open up the board, and you can type in a response. It's completely anonymous, but we can see collectively, what are you looking forward to and what are you concerned or worried about in retirement? Freedom. I love it. Less work stress. I know in my work with faculty and staff, I think I would probably say not being pulled in so many directions, right? All at once.
Having time to volunteer for charities, not just money. Following
Excellent.
my heart to serve others. Not having to apply for grants. Yay! Horseback riding, spending time in peace. Developing hobbies put on hold, getting back to fly fishing. And again, a couple more for volunteering, travel, freedom from obligations. Yep.
Time for your kids. Yeah.
A few freedoms, a few travels, a few volunteering, not dealing with HR issues. True. All right. The next one is concerns and worries, correct, Allison?
Yes. Thank you, Susanna.
Let's see.
I love the person that said no concerns. Phenomenal, right?
That's great.
It's all uphill.
Yeah. Finding a new identity is a concern for somebody. Not being needed, not having value. Establishing new daily schedule with spouse. We're going to address some of these things as we move through our presentation.
Keeping busy, right?
Yeah.
I think that's significant too, right? What does this kind of unencumbered time look like? You know? I have an upvote of 2 there, upvote of 2 for not being needed or having value.
Staying healthy. Staying healthy is a new one.
Being with spouse 24/7, an absolute
Yep.
concern. It changes that relational dynamic, which we'll touch upon towards the end of the presentation.
These are very similar to what we heard on the last session. So again, very common responses.
Yeah, but really good. And I'm hearing that identity piece here is going to be, is really going to be a shift. And, but that sounds like it's to be expected. Yeah, given the nature and scope of the work that you do. This next one's supposed to be a bit tongue-in-cheek. Top 10 reasons people flunk retirement. Retired for the wrong reasons. Didn't know myself as well as I thought I did. I had no plan. Hey, I thought retirement was just going to evolve on its own. Expected my partner to be my social life, right? We're definitely going to promote that everyone has their own hobbies and engagements, kind of, not necessarily including their partner, and overcome with boredom. If you can, drop in the chat a reason why you think you might flunk retirement. We'd love to hear that.
Time to think. Let's see, boredom. So somebody's anticipating possible boredom. And again, that's why we're here to kind of talk about, so hopefully we can avoid some of the pitfalls and kind of head them off at the pass. But definitely some concerns there with boredom. Anyone else? Haven't had much time for hobbies, so haven't established hobbies yet. So that's the concern, that they'll be bored. Social life. Feeling lonely, not seeing many people. Not many friends outside of work. Yes. Relationships and social connections, definitely a concern for a lot of people after retirement.
Yes.
We spend so much time at work, so many hours of our lives in work that other things kind of fall to the wayside, like friendships and family relationships. So definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Okay.
everyone for your participation. It's truly appreciated. I'm now going to turn it over to Susanna, who's going to talk about different phases of
Oh,
retirement.
mhm. And again, we are using a couple of frameworks as Allison spoke about Schlossberg's. We'll go through that one. The other one is Atchley's, and those are the main ones we're going to be talking about and kind of using their their labels that they use for different phases and kind of how they clump us together depending on how we might react to retirement. So the next slide is actually 6 phases of retirement. Um, let me get rid of my chat. Sorry, it was in my way. So Ashley is or was a psychologist, and he focused on the psychological and social aspects of retirement. He emphasized that retirement isn't a one-time event, but it's a prolonged adjustment period. So again, it's a big transition in life that you're going to go through and not often talked about enough. We focus on, puberty and adolescence and maybe the 5 and unders. We talk about all these other phases, but not so much towards the end. So that's why we're bringing attention to this. His research has been influential in shaping how we understand retirement beyond just the financial planning. A lot of times for this phase of life, we focus just on the financial planning, but this is the point where we should be considering identity, purpose, and relationships as well. And those are the big common things I heard you post as concerns, really the identity, your purpose, relationships. So his model really falls into what we're talking about right now. A lot of different people that have come after him that talk about the retirement phase kind of adapted his in a way. A lot of times they focus on the middle 4 and not so much on the first and sixth, but we felt it was important enough to talk about all of them because they all have their important tasks or things that to focus on during each phase. And we're going to explain each of these. So the first one, which most of you are in right now, is the pre-retirement phase. And again, this is before your retirement date. And a lot of you are here because of that, just to get more information and start preparing. So kudos to you for jumping on. You're ahead of a lot of people starting to talk about these things. So it involves anticipating, planning, preparing yourself mentally, psychologically, emotionally. People have a range of emotions during this time, anywhere from excitement to fear to concern to joy, maybe nervousness, anxiety, all of them. All of them are normal to have. It's expected when there's a big transition that's anticipated. Some key tasks during this phase, again, assessing financial readiness, considering your lifestyle changes, preparing mentally and emotionally for retirement, and discussing plans with family and friends. The next phase, which most of us look forward to, this phase can last anywhere from a few months to maybe a couple years. So it's the honeymoon phase. And people sometimes can be described under these 3 different categories, and you could move throughout them, but certain personalities will fall under certain categories predominantly. It doesn't mean you stay there. It just means you might fall into that soon after retirement. So for example, some of you already mentioned, you're looking forward to travel and passion project and embracing the feeling of freedom. It's exciting for you. So those people are more the honeymoon type. We're going to have the people that were pretty busy during the work time with routines outside. You had a lot of social engagements, extracurricular activities that you're doing right now. And so when you retire, you're kind of going to extend that time in those areas. And so those would fall under category number 2. Then there's some of you that are just done and just want to kick back, unplug, do nothing. you're exhausted, it's been hectic career for you, and you're ready to just relax. All of these are great. All of these, you're going to go in and out of some of these. You might start with one and be in another, and it's going to be lovely. This is what we look forward to. It's a really optimistic and energizing time for most people. However, this is the big however, and this is why we're talking about it. Without structure and purpose, some retirees may begin to feel a little restless or disconnected. As some of you guessed, you're already guessing, uh-oh, what am I going to do socially, right? So that's our honeymoon phase. And before we jump into the third phase, just a few things to reflect on. We have a few questions. Again, you can answer some of them in the chat box. You can mentally answer these, spend some time later after this presentation thinking about them, respond to some now. But here are some. What does retiring well look like to you? What does wholeness in retirement look like for you? What do you want the next chapter of your life to look like? And these two last ones I like because it's the most and least. What do you value most about your current life that you want to carry on into your retirement? And then the opposite, which is what do you value the least about your current way of life and aspects, and you want to let go as you move into retirement? And are we getting any responses?
We are great. Want to stay physically and emotionally healthy. The least being stressed, right? No more stress. I love getting rid of the demands and deadlines of working life. Excellent. So more freedom to maybe pursue things that you're interested in. Engagement in something meaningful, whether a hobby or current work theme, and maintenance of close human relationships. Relationships are a huge theme and so important, not only in your working life, but in retirement. Maybe, just as important, maybe even more so. So great. Thank you. Thank you so much for those responses.
Okay, and we were talking about the honeymoon phase where some people towards the end, if they're not careful, may start feeling disconnected and restless. This is where it kicks you into the next phase, which is the disenchantment phase. This is where, again, some people hopefully won't last too long in this. It might be the kick that you need to kind of start looking at how you want to set up your retirement. So the reality of the retirement is not meeting your expectations. You had a view of what it was going to be like, and all of a sudden you think, uh-oh, it's not what I thought it was going to be. What am I doing now? So you might face feelings of boredom, loneliness, and loss of identity. So some challenges during this phase. Again, some of you mentioned it already. You realize your social networks may shrink without the work contacts. You're struggling with a sense of purpose or usefulness. You might start feeling isolated or disconnected from society. And you might experience financial concerns or unexpected stressors. So this is the phase where it's confusing because you think, well, I'm retired, I should be happy. And so the disconnect between how you're feeling and how you think you should be doing isn't matching. So a lot of the times our shoulds make us feel uncomfortable. It's important for everyone to kind of acknowledge these feelings and really realize that it's temporary. It's a natural progression of the retirement process. Just know that the important part is not to stay there too long. It can lead to frustration if you stay in this too long, and it could also lead to depression, unfortunately. So make sure you're mindful of this phase and some of the challenges that you might face in this phase, and kind of start working on a plan on how to address every one of these challenges. Then the next one, after you start feeling this way, it might motivate you into starting to look at redefining your goals, establishing new routines, starting to build social connections, starting to reach out to family and friends that you kind of didn't would keep in touch with somewhat, but you know, life is life. Everybody's busy working. Now that you're retired, maybe some reconnection with people that you've known before or building new ones. Retirees at this point craft a fulfilling lifestyle that suits their changing needs and interests. That could include anywhere from part-time employment to volunteering, new hobbies or skills, reconnecting with family and friends, and engaging in community activities or clubs. So the reorientation phase kind of depends on what your interests are already, or things that you haven't had time to pursue, or you thought you wanted to try and you just haven't had time. This reorientation phase is a great time to start doing some of these things and experimenting to see kind of what lands, what doesn't so much. You'll learn a lot about yourself during this phase. And then this is the phase we all hope to get to and be in for a very long time, the stability phase. This is when you kind of get the groove of retirement and things are making sense and they're kind of just humming along and you're relaxed, you're at peace. You have some satisfying routines, some balance, you feel secure in your lifestyle, you have your social ties, you're pursuing your activities, you're managing your health and finances well. Again, this phase can last many years and it represents a mature, stable adjustment to retired life. So hopefully this is where we stay most of our retired years. This isn't the last phase again. There's one additional one. And the reason for that is, if you guys can guess, well, it's up there now, but if you maybe they didn't see it. Can you guys guess the percentage of people that work into retirement, that they decide to go to work after they retire? It's a percentage. Did anybody catch it? If not, you can take a guess in the chat. 25%, I'm seeing somebody say. 30. Any others, Allison? I can't. I'm trying to multitask.
It looks like about a third. It looks like the guess is about a third. So
Okay.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I'll advance to the next slide for the big reveal.
Yeah. 55%, more than half, a little more than half people plan to work in retirement. For multiple reasons. And this is why I'm showing this slide, is because it's interesting to see what those reasons might be. And it's some of the concerns that you guys are stating. So some people like to stay connected with work because of social connections, staying active, maintaining the sense of purpose, or financial reasons. In our last session, somebody said just maintaining mental acuity, which is great. Some people really love their job, so can't imagine being without their job, so they keep working. Why not keep doing something you love and get paid for it, but also have some free time? So kind of best of both worlds. So was that surprising to anybody? It did surprise me, which I think is why I used the slide. I didn't realize 55% of people still worked. So another interesting thing that I found when I was preparing for this is 68% of workers and 74% of retirees expressed confidence in having enough money to live comfortably throughout retirement. So pretty good percentage feel confident, but again, there's that smaller percent that's concerned. The current age for full Social Security is 67, but you can take partial as early as 62. So just some percentages and stats for you guys that I found interesting. And again, the reason that people come out of the stability phase that we just talked about is mainly, as this slide shows, because they want to return to work, and that's called the termination phase. And again, people return to work for various reasons. And termination phase is usually for work. Again, because of the life cycle and it's natural, we all are going to eventually have severe health issues, just due to the aging process. So that's what will end up kicking you out of the stability phase, is because unfortunately we'll start having some issues with our health that your life won't feel quite as stable because of the health issues. and of course, end of life. So tips to avoid some of the pitfalls in this phase is to plan financially, which it seems like probably most of you will do if you haven't already with some of the courses from this series. And then other things you can do to make sure that you're staying healthy with healthy lifestyles and habits. Research your health options, your insurances, your long-term care plans. You have to pay into long-term care plans to be able to hire people to care for you in your home or going to a facility. Be careful with that. People assume just because they have health care, it means that they're going to have somebody that they can call and they'll come to your home and caregive. That's not quite how it works. So make sure you're aware of what your plans are, what they include, and if you have to pay extra for any other benefits. Also, a lot of us should have an advanced healthcare directive, regardless of how old you are. It's for 18 and over, because we never know. Sometimes we have accidents. So you should have somebody that's named as your medical decision maker. It doesn't require an attorney for that paperwork. I'm sure you're familiar or you've seen it. Maybe you have it. They're in doctor's offices. And make sure you tell that person that you designated them, because I've had situations that I've dealt with in the hospital where the person that was supposed to make medical decisions wasn't even aware that they were written down as a medical decision maker. So that would be a horrible surprise to somebody. And make sure you're establishing your documents, your living wills. And again, final point is making sure you're sharing these plans with people, because again, it can help avoid conflict, and people aren't guessing what you may or may not want at certain points. And so it will reduce potential family crises or arguments and things that can happen that are not pleasant later on in life. So that is the sixth and final stage of Ashley's phases of retirement. And we are going to go ahead and kick it to Allison. If you want to do these couple of slides before our break.
Sure, sure. Yeah, we'll do a couple slides and then we'll go ahead, take a 10-minute break after this next couple of slides here. So I always say in psychology, we love scaling questions, right? How do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, right? 1 being, 10 being I feel fabulous, 1 being not so good at all. So here is an opportunity to just take a look and kind of look at where you fall, right? With some of these questions, right? 10 being, I'm really feeling great about this piece of retirement. 1 being, I'm not feeling so good. And then if you could kind of drop your numbers that you're seeing in the chat. So the first one is retirement's going to be the most exciting part of my life versus I dread the future, right? Where are you falling on that, 1 to 10 scale? And, there's an abundance of exciting opportunities versus, wait a minute, I think my opportunities are going to start to disappear.
So for the first one, Allison, we have some 8s and 9s.
Fantastic.
They're excited,
Great.
exciting times.
That's really actually wonderful to hear, because people really run the gamut in how they feel about retirement.
And the next one, we have some 7s, 4 to 5.
Okay. So
7
maybe
again.
you're feeling that maybe some opportunities start to dwindle, right? Those professional opportunities could essentially change. And then staying active versus wanting to withdraw, right? So that's an interesting interesting dynamic essentially. How active do you want to be versus withdrawing? And then I intend to keep my sense of humor, keep my good humor up, or hey, I don't think this is funny at all. I don't know how I feel about this.
All right, we got some 9s for the last 2. Changes to opportunity, some 5. So we have a variety, which is expected. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody's prepared differently and handles change differently.
That being said, I think it's so important to use scaling questions in your life to say, where am I at? You know, how am I feeling about this next chapter and this change? And now we're going to again engage in something interactive. And the questions, I'm going to have you scan a QR code one final time. What are some things that you got from work that were important to you? And where else or how else can you get those things now? Again, this is going to be anonymous. You can see people's answers, but go ahead if you don't mind scanning the QR and talking about, you know, what you got from work that was important, of value, and where you can get those things in retirement. Scan that code. I'm having a hard time pulling that. Susanna, is that pulling up?
Hold on. It's letting me answer.
Okay.
Are people seeing it? Let me try
No,
again.
it's not. Yeah.
And if not, that's okay. You can even drop it into the chat.
Actually, I'm seeing it. This is great.
Oh yeah, there it
Socialization,
is. Mhm.
right? Being needed, volunteering, opportunities to pursue my intellectual curiosities. That sounds fantastic. It's like, where does your mind want to take you? Friends, leaning into my field of interest, checking out ideas Phil Cass mentioned. I only caught a part of that, but it sounded really fascinating, the opportunities available post-retirement with UC Davis.
They hope
Mm.
somebody hopes to get to continue research and learning. Fellowship in church, spirituality, very important.
Oh, I love the mentoring piece. Serving younger colleagues with mentoring. People are so thirsty for having a mentor that's been through, you know, the vicissitudes of a career. I think that is so needed. But interestingly, the most votes were social connections and friends.
Mhm.
And so thinking about, you know, I think there's like, I don't know if it's a faculty, you know, there's some kind of emeritus association with Davis. Maybe Phil Cass mentioned that. But yeah, how can you maybe stay connected socially in some ways to the university or to another yeah, organization? Because that is really important. And Susanna mentioned in our last webinar, are there old friends that you can start to connect with now? Hey, can we jump on Zoom or have a phone call or go out to lunch, right? Pulling some of those connections back in, I think is important. Susanna, I don't know if you have any other tips or thoughts.
I think also forming the newer connections. Some people through volunteering is the big one. If you're spiritual, church related spiritual organizations, there's a lot of special interest groups in Meetup, like knitting clubs, book clubs are popular, hiking groups. There are a lot. If you guys are familiar with Meetup, you can find everything under the sun there, and there's groups for it pretty much. Going to a cafe and hanging out, reading a book. I know that sounds like you're keeping to yourself, but really sometimes you just start chatting with somebody there, or you see somebody else doing the same thing. You might spark a conversation about what book they're reading. So I think it's more about how you're willing to spend your own time and then making connections at those things, at those hobbies that you might be trying out. Because then you'll have something that to talk about already. Like if you are joining one of those clubs, you can talk about hiking, you can talk about fishing. You already have that in common, so it makes it a little bit easier to approach somebody new to spark up conversations. So again, remembering too that we all have different personalities. I consider myself an introvert, so it's a little bit harder to kind of put yourself out there. We kind of like staying a little bit more secluded versus extroverts. So again, what's your personality like? And considering that when you're trying to come up with a new lifestyle and framework for your retirement.
Yeah. You've been staying connected to colleagues across the world, right? Because I see on here, you staying connected to colleagues is important. We will do a couple more slides and then we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Again, Dr. Schlossberg, the counseling psychologist, was talking about that shift in looking at aging from a deficit point of view versus, a positive kind of perspective where people can continue to contribute to society in a positive and meaningful way. I remember even maybe 20, 30 years ago, right? There were these ideas about aging that were quite negative, and now we're starting to tap into all of the wisdom and accumulated knowledge, right? That's even here in this virtual room right now, that can be shared. And I think that's so important to start to reframe aging as this ego integrity piece, life satisfaction, right? What can I impart to others, or how can I, retire and engage in satisfying activities. The last piece here before our break, Dr. Schlossberg wrote a book on, topics that we deal with in retirement, your relationship to aging, which we just addressed, right? That push-pull or that love-hate relationship, embracing change, which is really hard for most people. A lot of us like routine, and being at UC Davis, right? There's a routine in some ways, even though there's a lot of flexibility as well. Health challenges that Susanna addressed, and intimacy and romance. What do my intimate relationships look like in retirement? But my favorite one is going to be creating your retirement fantasy. This is where I love to have people do just a quick exercise. And I said, if you fell asleep tonight, woke up tomorrow, and a miracle occurred, during the nighttime, and you were living your retirement fantasy, what would that look like? I would love for some people to drop that in the chat. What is your retirement fantasy?
Living your friends and family, enjoying outdoors together. Sailing in the tropics. I want to join that person.
Wow.
Living in the south of France. Nice. Going to the bakery every day. Yeah, I heard carbs don't count in France, so you're good. Remaining physically, socially, and intellectually active. Ooh, I like that one. Buy some land, grow food, and adopt animals. Lots of animals. It's like cycling the world with a friend. Yay.
Wow.
Lots of travel, keeping good health. Summer escapes from the heat to new places. Yes, it gets hot here. Volunteering at animal shelters. Yeah, we have to remember our furry friends during retirement. They can be very helpful in healing. Spending time by the ocean. Voice lessons once a week. There you go. You guys are creative and talented group of people.
Yeah, excellent. And as I say, I think it's so important for this next phase to tap into wishes and fantasies. What are things you're daydreaming about, right? Someone just said, have my own horse. Phenomenal, right? So tap into those wishes and fantasies, because that is coming from somewhere kind of deep and existential within you. And even if your fantasy doesn't play out to a T, it's going to help guide you. Wow, living for a month
Yes.
every year on the Italian Riviera, writing poetry and stories,
Nice. Love it.
helping with therapeutic writing for disabled children or disabled
Those
people
are-
and children.
Yeah.
These
They're
are
great.
pretty phenomenal. Pretty phenomenal. I think this is a great note to end on and take a break at the current time. We're going to do about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So
Yeah.
coming back a couple minutes to the 3 o'clock hour, if you could then stay on, we'll then finish the last portion of the presentation. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll take about a 10-minute break.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully, people are jumping back on. Thank you for sticking it out with us. Maybe for another 45-ish minutes or so to an hour. The afternoon's always a little bit harder for people to sit and listen, but we appreciate it. And we appreciate all the comments that are coming in. Feel free to continue asking questions. Even if it's not quite about what we're talking about right now, but any concerns or questions you have when it comes to mental health, emotional health in retirement. So we've been talking about Schlossberg's some quotes and about her. I'm jumping into her concepts of the 6 paths to retirement. And I like to think about them as kind of categories. She's turning 96 this year and doing really well, it seems like, physically, mentally. And her resume I was looking at, it's pretty impressive even now into her retirement. So she's done a lot of great work even after retirement. So definitely a sharp person. So keep your brains and bodies moving, as she's one of those people that you can kind of look up to in terms of retirement and how retirement can go well. So that's kind of why we see her as kind of the guru, because she's still going strong. So here is one of her quotes. I think of retirement as the bridge between leaving one set of roles, relationship, routines, and assumptions, and developing a new set. It is a transition to what's next. So again, retirement as a transition, another transition in life. She has 6 categories. You may fall into one more than another, but we all have a little bit of all of them at some point in retirement. So the first one, the first label, see if it fits for you, is the continuers. They usually have existing skills and interests, but modify them to fit change retirement circumstances. So they maintain their identity with modifications and stay connected to their former work. So some of you guys that might continue doing some work with your current job, just obviously not full time, this might be you. You might be a continuer, continue using some of your skills from work, maybe even in a volunteer capacity somewhere else. So those are the continuers. The adventurers, I heard a lot of adventurers who are looking forward to trying new things, maybe traveling. Maybe you regretted or wish that you had done certain things and during your life, but you just didn't have time because obviously working and kids and such. So at this point, this is when these people take advantage of retirement, seeing it as an opportunity to pursue some of those unrealized dreams. Maybe so, like somebody said, maybe you do go out and buy yourself a horse, or maybe you do go live on the side of the coast of Italy or in France. These are the adventurers. Number 3, some of us won't do so well in these. It depends on your personality. These are the people that are just tired of work because they're exhausted. Maybe they had a high level. A lot of you obviously have a difficult high level job, draining. So you retire and you just take some time to relax, kick your feet up. You're perfectly comfortable not doing anything, not having a schedule. You just want to relax. Some of you guys might see that as the freedom that you guys mentioned. This isn't for everyone because some people are more active and need to be engaged and doers, a little bit more doers. So it's not always for everybody, because some people say, if I try this, I feel stir crazy. So if you feel stir crazy doing nothing and not having a schedule, you are not an easy glider. You'll fall somewhere else. I feel like I would be an excellent easy glider. I'm pretty chill. So the next slide, we'll go into the next category. Those are our involved spectators. Those are people that want to be, again, immersed still in their former field, maybe not at a full-time capacity, but you're still engaged, maybe not even at the level you were. Maybe you take more of a follower role versus a leader role. You're more supporting the team versus being the quarterback per se. So you still want to be involved, but a little bit less and not as stressful. That would be the involved spectators. The searchers, I feel like everybody is a searcher at some point. You are out looking for your next niche. You're exploring new options. It's a trial and error period, trying new hobbies, new activities, see if you like them. You might not. And then you just pivot to a different activity or organization that you volunteer with. You're just feeling things out. So I think most people are going to be searchers or at some point during their retirement, especially earlier on. Then we have the retreaters. These people will take some time out to think or perhaps disengage from life. Maybe we can consider these the thinkers. This is the only potentially negative retirement personality. And here's why. One, the one who's depressed in retirement because he or she has no purpose. Again, we talked about how important purpose is. So there is a little bit of risk if you're more of a retreater because we don't want you to fall into that category where you're a little bit more depressed because of lack of purpose. And then the other type is the one who's retreating until he or she can determine next steps. Usually that one's where most people fall under. Where they're just kind of laying low until they figure out the next steps. So those are the different 6 categories or paths for retirement that Schlossberg has named. And hopefully you can see yourself in some of these. You can even, if you want to drop in the chat what you think you are after hearing these or reading these. And we have a quote from Miss Schlossberg again. She has fabulous quotes. We cannot control our lives to avoid the downs. What we can control is the way we deal with the ups and downs of life. In other words, the resilience with which we manage change and the strategies we have in place to cope. And then she references her book. Again, this is coming from her very good book on retirement. And then what's our next? So if you, again, that summarizes her,
Yeah,
her,
I'm getting,
oh, you're
Susanna,
getting
I'm
some.
sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
yeah, an easy glider at the beginning and then an adventure. I really like that, right? It's
Yeah.
like kind of taking some time and then refueling and then out for the adventure. I think that's great.
Yeah. Again, these are all fluid. It's not like you're just one for the rest of your retirement. Hopefully you're moving throughout them and hopefully not sticking to the ones that aren't so great for very long. Again, to try to pursue some purpose and social connections. If you take nothing else from this presentation, now the psychological portfolio for retirement, these are the big 3 that we focus on: identity, relationships, and purpose. So those are the big things that can affect how you will move into retirement, if it's going to feel good or not so good. So make sure you're basing your identity on your characteristics, your personality, how you see your world. Reason for the identity is some people really, especially in our society, it's really about what we produce. Like, what are we doing to contribute? And we usually see it as contributing something tangible. But even you being you is a purpose, and it adds value to the community. So you don't have to be producing something. You imparting wisdom or mentoring or time, imparting these to the next generations are important. So remembering those things, remembering that, again, this is the time where some people start whittling down on material things, kind of cleaning things out because not quite as important anymore. You're focusing more on relationships. So again, relationships, try to start making new connections or rekindling older connections. You could still keep in touch with some of your workmates. Maybe you catch up with them even if they're still working, maybe an after hours catch up, coffee over the phone, over Zoom, whatever. Or if your friends are retiring too, great. Then you guys can have retirement buddies. And again, for purpose, you have to find something that gets you up in the morning. And what is that? Your reason. It could be your grandkids, it could be your pet, it could be your new horse or your new adventure you're going on. Maybe you're going to go take a hike or even go for a walk in the neighborhood, something that you have planned for that day that will get you out of bed. Or it's getting up out of bed and spending your time with your partner, having a cup of coffee in the morning, just chit-chatting, doing the crossword puzzle, whatever it is, finding purpose. It doesn't have to be huge. That's the thing. Some people believe, oh my gosh, I have to plan, okay, retirement, this big deal. It's like it could be really small things that do bring purpose into your life. Now, Allison mentioned, we're kind of tongue in cheek about the 10 reasons some people flunk retirement. Here are some things to focus on so that it's a positive outcome and go successfully into retirement. Continue with the mental stimulation, whatever that is for you. Games, still working, reading, do something meaningful. And again, that's subjective. I don't know what's meaningful for you, but you would explore that to see what brings meaning to your life. Try your activities that you've been postponing that you didn't have time for, a project you've been wanting to get to, or maybe you're half done with a project. Now you have the time to work on it. Make sure you're balancing work and play. A lot of people end up donating time to volunteer or for other activities. Please be careful not to overextend yourself on that. Just because it's not quote unquote work doesn't mean that you need to be agreeing to it because it's for a good cause or because it's for a good reason. Make sure you're watching your energy levels. Make sure you're still having fun at it. So sometimes people volunteer so much that it stops being fun. And it stops feeling quite as good. So if you feel that way, maybe it's time to step back away from it, maybe try a different activity or just not do it quite as much. So just keep an eye on that, work and play. Make sure play doesn't start feeling like work. Continue to make money at work you love. Some of you guys can turn a hobby into making some extra cash. Some of you will continue in your current job, just fewer hours. So continue contributing to your finances in a small way might help you guys feel like you're a little bit more stable in terms of the finances area. Number 6, I just mentioned, you could turn a hobby into a vocation. Stay physically and mentally healthy. And again, you don't have to have a huge workout routine. It could be walks. Walks are really great for just your physical and mental well-being. Remain productive in the areas that you feel bring you joy and happiness. Whatever productivity looks like to you, productivity could be, oh, I reached out to somebody and connected, and now both of us weren't lonely, you know. So it could be productive in that sense. Make a difference for others, and stay connected. So all of these, if you practice some of them, should help into your retirement so that you have a successful transition and retirement stage. Now we are going to attempt to show you a video, and I say attempt because the last time we had technical difficulties, so we weren't able to, but I'm going to give it a shot. If it doesn't work after one time, we'll just scrap it. But I'm going to try to share. It's about a 12-minute video on retirement. Listen to it, and any thoughts that come up or feedback that come up, you can go ahead and drop it in the chat if something resonates with you or if you don't agree. And we'll go from there. Let me try to share my screen and see if I can make this happen. Share sound. Hold on. There it is. Can you hear it? Not yet?
Can't
stop
see
it.
it either. You can't see it or
Oh, you can't see it. Okay. Hold on.
You might need to ask me if you can share.
All right, hold on. Do you have it up?
I know I don't have it up.
Okay, it's fine. Let me. Give me a second, and then if this doesn't work, then we will go ahead and scrap it. I'm pulling it up now. Okay, and now I'm going to attempt to share it for everybody on Zoom. Share sound. No, I don't think it's going to work again. Mm-mm.
Yeah, the sound's not working.
We tested it earlier, it worked, of course, and now it's not. So we will put the video in the chat just in case anybody wants to reference it later. It's worth a watch. It's about 12 minutes. It's Jane Fonda, as you might be able to see right now. All right. I'll put it in the chat in case anybody wants to check it out.
I put it in
Oh, I
the
think
chat
you
for
already
you.
did. Great. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, this is going to round out, I would say, the last 15 minutes of the presentation. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Everyone can see the screen, correct? Yes, Susanna?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. I think it's so important to think about primary relationships in retirement. It's whether you're partnered, not partnered, right? You know, a significant friend, maybe you're engaging even in elder care. A lot of your primary relationships will change in retirement, and maybe you have or haven't kind of broached important conversations with people in your life. I always think it's fascinating when you look at relationships, intimate relationships, and there's always this component of mind reading. This person should know what I'm thinking, therefore I don't have to say it. So today, what Susanna and I really want to pitch is kind of over communicating with significant people in your life. Here's a little bit of a checklist, right? I've discussed my plans and expectations for retirement with my spouse or another significant person, right? And feel free to drop in the chat if any of this resonates. My spouse and I have talked about retiring at the same time. I think we had someone in the last group saying, "Oh, my partner's still going to be working and I'm going to be retired. This is kind of fantastic. I'm going to get some time to myself." Whereas someone else might want to be with important people in their life during retirement. I think the other piece that's really essential is talking about kind of domestic duties. How will that shift? Someone in the last presentation was talking about a little bit of resentment, I think. They were still working, their partner was retired, but they were still making the meals. So my piece of wisdom to impart here is try to over communicate with your spouse about retirement. And if anyone has any thoughts or questions, feel free to go ahead and drop that in the chat. And Susanna, if you have any thoughts as well.
Right.
Okay.
One of the things is also making sure that you speak about expectations in terms of socializing. Is the expectation that you're only going to be socializing, or you expect your partner to spend most time with you? And maybe they're not expecting the same thing. Maybe they're expecting that you each have your own activities to do, and then you come together and are able to share with each other kind of how your day went or what your experience was. It's kind of to the last point on this slide that Allison's showing. That way you can say, if somebody asks how your day was or what's new, it's not a nothing or everything's fine. Kind of like you hear teenagers say that sometimes if you ask them how their day was, fine. So it is important to each, if you can, have some things that you can do on your own, but also come together and be able to share those with each other.
That's such an excellent point, right? How can you develop your own interest, potentially, your own social group that will kind of augment and add to your life and not just depend on kind of the intimate relationship to do that. So this is really, we're rounding things out now. This is our final slide. What makes people happy? Healthcare access. So important. So if you're retiring locally or somewhere else, trying to vet the healthcare that's available there, I think is really important. Talked about family. Financial security is a really, really big one. People clearly fear that they're not going to have enough to live on in retirement. We touched upon volunteering or mentoring, so using those phenomenal skills that you've all acquired over all of these years to help other people, but also having boundaries in doing so, like Susanna said. I think what I wanted to say to all of you is you've given so much of yourselves to the service of UC Davis and the larger intellectual community. It's okay now to do something just for you, whatever that is. We've touched upon the other pieces. Kind of my favorite, and Phil Cass really showed this in his dog photo, is our pets. I made a joke last time that they're not maybe certified emotional support animals, but they certainly provide us with a lot of emotional support and an outlet for a really, really positive connection. To wrap up, I want to do a quick plug for the Academic and Staff Assistance Program. I believe that when you're looking at retirement benefits, there's an election for ASAP. So you can use ASAP in retirement. And I'm sure most of you know this, but we are a brief counseling service, both at the hospital and on the Davis campus. And we offer counseling short-term related to depression, anxiety, relationship issues, career, retirement. We also offer couples therapy as well. And we run a host of groups. Susanna is running a grief group at the current time. I am running an elder care support group, which is germane for a lot of people. It's drop-in via Zoom, and Susanna will drop the link in the chat to these groups and to our ASAP services. We're also running a group for neurodivergent faculty and staff, as well as a pet loss support group for faculty and staff. So unless you have any questions, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you both for a great session once again and all the great information. They will send me the slides and I'll send them out with my email with the recordings, excuse me, next week. And I just want to thank everybody for coming to all of these sessions. If you made all 4, 3, 2, 1, it doesn't matter. We're just really glad that you took the time out of your day to join us and learn about your retirement, because it is a really big deal. And if you need more information, you can go onto the UCNet website and just type in retirement. They do have additional classes that you can take. They're not quite as personalized as ours, but it is good information. So if there's anything you need, you don't know where to go, shoot us an email, retireecenter@ucdavis.edu. We monitor that email all day long, 5 days a week. And so everybody enjoy your afternoon, enjoy the weekend. Susanna and Allison, I really thank you so much for jumping in to do this year, and I hope we'll see you back.
Thank
Take
you.
care,
Thanks for having
everybody.
us.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.